Welcome to the fascinating world of biopsychology. Have you ever wondered how your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are connected to the intricate workings of your body? Biopsychology is the field that bridges the gap between biology and psychology, exploring how our brain, nervous system, and genetics shape who we are. In this video, we'll journey through the building blocks of human behavior, from the tiniest genes to the vast networks of neurons in your brain. Get ready to discover how your body and mind are deeply intertwined, and how understanding this connection can unlock new insights into health, personality, and even mental illness. Before we dive in, let's outline what you'll learn in this chapter. We'll start with human genetics, exploring how DNA and genes influence both our bodies and our minds. Next, we'll look at the cells that make up the nervous system, focusing on how neurons communicate. We'll then break down the parts of the nervous system, including the brain and spinal cord, and see how they work together. Finally, we'll explore the endocrine system, which uses hormones to regulate everything from growth to stress. Each section builds on the last, giving you a complete picture of the biological foundations of behavior. Think about the last time you took apart a device just to see how it worked. Our bodies are much the same. What happens inside is often very different from what we see on the outside. Psychologists are like detectives, searching for clues that connect the firing of neurons to our thoughts and actions. In this chapter, you'll see how the hidden mechanisms inside us, our genes, cells, and organs, create the experiences we have every day. By understanding these processes, we can better appreciate the complexity and wonder of being human. Let's begin with genetics, the blueprint of life. Every cell in your body contains DNA, a code made up of genes that determine your physical and psychological traits. Genes come in different versions called alleles, and the combination you inherit from your parents shapes everything from your eye color to your risk for certain diseases. But genes don't act alone. Your environment plays a huge role in how these traits are expressed. Throughout this section, we'll see how the interplay between genes and environment creates the unique individuals we all are. Although all humans share a common set of biological mechanisms, each of us is unique. Our genes interact with our environment to produce a wide variety of behaviors, thoughts, and reactions. For example, two people exposed to the same disease might have very different outcomes, depending on their genetic makeup. Researchers study genetics to understand why some people are more susceptible to certain conditions, and how traits like intelligence or even psychological disorders can run in families. This knowledge helps us appreciate the diversity and complexity of human life. See genetics in action. Let's look at sickle cell anemia. This genetic disorder causes red blood cells to take on a crescent shape, which can block blood flow and lead to pain and tissue damage. Interestingly, the sickle cell gene is more common among people of African descent. Why? Because carrying one copy of the gene provides protection against malaria, a deadly disease in many parts of Africa. This example shows how a genetic mutation can be both harmful and beneficial, depending on the environment. Story of sickle cell anemia illustrates Charles Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. Traits that help an organism survive and reproduce are more likely to be passed on. In regions where malaria is common, carrying the sickle cell gene is an advantage. But in places without malaria, the gene can cause health problems without any benefit. This balance between genetic risk and environmental advantage is a key theme in understanding how our genes shape our lives. When it comes to behavior, two fields offer different perspectives: evolutionary psychology and behavioral genetics. Evolutionary psychology looks at universal behaviors that have evolved over time, like fear or cooperation. Behavioral genetics, on the other hand, studies how individual differences arise from the interaction of genes and environment. Twin and adoption studies help researchers tease apart these influences, revealing the complex dance between nature and nurture. Genetic variation is the key to a species' ability to adapt. Every person's unique combination of genes begins at conception, when an egg and sperm, each with 23 chromosomes, combine to form a zygote. These chromosomes are made of DNA, which contains genes that control traits like eye color or height. Some traits are influenced by a single gene, while others, like skin color or intelligence, are polygenic, controlled by many genes working together. Your genotype is your unique genetic makeup, while your phenotype is how those genes are expressed in your appearance and behavior. For example, you might inherit genes for brown eyes from your parents, but your actual eye color, the phenotype, depends on how those genes interact with each other and with your environment. Most traits are influenced by multiple genes, and the environment can play a big role in how they show up. Some traits are controlled by dominant and recessive alleles. A dominant allele will always show up in your phenotype if you have it, while a recessive allele only appears if you inherit two copies. For example, a cleft chin is a dominant trait, so you only need one dominant allele to have it. If you inherit two recessive alleles, you'll have a smooth chin. This simple pattern helps explain how certain traits are passed from one generation to the next. Geneticists use Punnett squares to predict how genes will combine in offspring. By mapping out the possible combinations of alleles from each parent, they can estimate the chances of a child inheriting certain traits. For example, if one parent is homozygous for a dominant trait and the other is homozygous for a recessive trait, all their children will show the dominant trait. But if both parents are heterozygous, there's a 50-50 chance for each trait. Some genetic disorders like sickle cell anemia or phenylketonuria, PKU, are caused by inheriting two copies of a recessive gene. PKU, for example, results from a missing enzyme and can lead to serious health problems if untreated. Understanding how these disorders are inherited helps doctors and families make informed decisions about health and treatment. Most human traits are polygenic, meaning they're influenced by many genes. Height, skin color, and weight are all examples. This complexity means that predicting these traits is much harder than for single gene traits. Polygenic inheritance also explains why there's so much variation in the human population. Mutations are sudden, permanent changes in a gene. While many mutations are harmful, some can provide advantages, helping individuals survive and reproduce. This genetic variability is essential for evolution by natural selection, allowing populations to adapt to changing environments. Without genetic diversity, a species would be vulnerable to extinction if the environment changed suddenly. Genes don't act alone, they interact with the environment in complex ways. The concept of range of reaction suggests that genes set boundaries for potential, but the environment determines where within that range a person will fall. For example, a child with high genetic potential for intelligence will only reach that potential in a stimulating environment. Other theories, like genetic environmental correlation and epigenetics, show that genes and environment influence each other in both directions. Epigenetics is the study of how the same genotype can lead to different phenotypes, depending on environmental influences. Identical twins, for example, share the same DNA but can develop very different traits or even diseases. This field reveals that gene expression is not fixed, but can change throughout life based on experiences, environment, and even stress. Genes influence more than just physical traits, they also play a role in psychological characteristics and disorders. Studies have found genetic links to personality, temperament, and conditions like depression or schizophrenia. However, genes are only part of the story. Environmental factors are also crucial in determining whether these traits or disorders develop. Research on schizophrenia shows how both genetics and environment matter. In one study, adoptees with a high genetic risk for schizophrenia were much more likely to develop the disorder if they were raised in a disturbed family environment. This evidence supports the idea that both genetic vulnerability and environmental stress are necessary for certain psychological disorders to appear. Now let's shift our focus to the nervous system. It's made up of two main types of cells, glial cells and neurons. Glial cells provide support, insulation, and nutrients for neurons, while neurons are the information processors that carry signals throughout the body. Recent research shows that the ratio of glia to neurons is closer to 1:1 than previously thought, highlighting the importance of both cell types in brain function. Neurons are the building blocks of the nervous system, with about 100 billion present at birth. Each neuron has a semipermeable membrane, a cell body, soma, branching dendrites that receive signals, and a long axon that sends signals. At the end of the axon are terminal buttons which release neurotransmitters, the chemicals that allow neurons to communicate with each other. Any axons are covered by a fatty substance called the myelin sheath, which acts as insulation and speeds up signal transmission. The myelin sheath isn't continuous, there are small gaps called nodes of Ranvier. Loss of myelin, as seen in disorders like multiple sclerosis, can disrupt communication between neurons and lead to symptoms like fatigue, loss of motor control, and more. Neurons communicate through a combination of electrical and chemical signals. When a neuron is at rest, there's a difference in charge across its membrane called the resting potential. When a signal arrives, it causes a rapid change in this charge, leading to an action potential, a brief electrical impulse that travels down the axon. At the end, neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic cleft, where they bind to receptors on the next neuron. Action potential is an all-or-none event, either it happens fully or not at all. When the threshold of excitation is reached, sodium ions rush into the cell, causing a spike in electrical charge. This impulse travels down the axon, jumping between the nodes of Ranvier until it reaches the terminal buttons. Here, neurotransmitters are released to continue the signal to the next neuron. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that cross the synaptic gap and bind to specific receptors on the next neuron. Each neurotransmitter fits its receptor like a key in a lock, ensuring precise communication. After delivering their message, neurotransmitters are either broken down, drift away, or are reabsorbed in a process called reuptake. This cycle keeps the system running smoothly. Different neurotransmitters are linked to different functions and behaviors. For example, dopamine is involved in mood and movement, while serotonin affects mood and appetite. Drugs can act as agonists, mimicking neurotransmitters, or as antagonists, blocking their effects. Understanding these interactions is key to treating psychological disorders like depression or schizophrenia. Nervous system is divided into two main parts: the central nervous system (CNS), which includes the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system (PNS), which connects the CNS to the rest of the body. The PNS is further divided into the somatic and autonomic systems, each with its own specialized functions. Somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements and relays sensory information to the CNS. It includes motor neurons, which send instructions to muscles, and sensory neurons, which bring information from the senses. The autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, controls involuntary functions like heartbeat and digestion, and is divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. Sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for stress. Think of the fight or flight response. It increases heart rate, dilates pupils, and releases adrenaline. The parasympathetic system calms the body down, restoring normal function after the threat has passed. Together, they maintain homeostasis, keeping your body in balance. Central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord acts as a relay station, sending messages between the brain and the rest of the body. It also controls reflexes, allowing for quick responses to certain stimuli without involving the brain. The brain itself is divided into two hemispheres and several lobes, each with specialized functions. Neuroplasticity is the brain's remarkable ability to change and adapt. Whether it's recovering from injury, learning new skills, or forming new memories, the nervous system can reorganize itself in response to experience. This adaptability is greatest in childhood but continues throughout life, offering hope for recovery after brain damage. Brain is divided into left and right hemispheres connected by the corpus callosum. Each hemisphere controls the opposite side of the body and has specialized functions. For example, the left hemisphere is often associated with language and logic, while the right is linked to creativity and spatial abilities. However, both sides work together to create a unified experience. Studies of people with a severed corpus callosum, often done to treat severe epilepsy, reveal fascinating insights. These split-brain patients show that each hemisphere can operate independently, sometimes leading to surprising behaviors. For instance, a person might be unable to name an object seen with the left eye but can draw it with the left hand. This research highlights the brain's complexity and the importance of interhemispheric communication. Much of what we know about brain function comes from studying people with brain injuries. For example, strokes can damage specific brain regions, leading to changes in movement, behavior, or judgment. By linking these changes to the affected areas, researchers map out the functions of different brain regions, deepening our understanding of how the brain works. Cerebral cortex is divided into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. Each lobe has specialized functions. The frontal lobe is involved in reasoning, movement, and language. The parietal lobe processes sensory information. The temporal lobe handles hearing and memory, while the occipital lobe is dedicated to vision. Together, these regions create our conscious experience. 2 regions are especially important for language: Broca's area, involved in producing speech, and Wernicke's area, crucial for understanding language. Damage to Broca's area can make speaking difficult, while damage to Wernicke's area affects comprehension. These discoveries have shaped our understanding of how the brain processes language. Beneath the cortex lies the limbic system, a group of structures involved in emotion and memory. The hippocampus is essential for learning and forming new memories. The amygdala processes emotions and emotional memories, while the hypothalamus regulates hunger, thirst, and body temperature. These structures work together to shape our emotional lives. One of the most famous cases in neuroscience is that of Henry Molaison, known as HM. After surgery to remove his hippocampus, HM lost the ability to form new memories, though he could still learn new skills. His case revealed the crucial role of the hippocampus in memory consolidation and inspired decades of research into how memories are formed and stored. Midbrain and hindbrain are responsible for basic life functions. The midbrain includes the reticular formation, which regulates sleep and arousal, and areas that produce dopamine. The hindbrain contains the medulla, pons, and cerebellum, which control breathing, heart rate, coordination, and balance. These regions keep us alive and functioning every day. Modern technology allows us to study the living brain in incredible detail. CT scans use X-rays to create images of brain structure, while PET scans show brain activity by tracking radioactive tracers. MRI and fMRI use magnetic fields to reveal both structure and function, and EEG measures electrical activity. These tools help scientists and doctors diagnose conditions and understand how the brain works. Endocrine system is a network of glands that produce hormones, chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream. Unlike neurotransmitters, which act quickly and locally, hormones have widespread and long-lasting effects. The endocrine system regulates growth, metabolism, stress, and reproduction, working closely with the nervous system to maintain balance in the body. Key glands in the endocrine system include the pituitary, the master gland, thyroid, adrenal glands, pancreas, and gonads. Each gland releases specific hormones that regulate vital functions. For example, the thyroid controls metabolism, the adrenal glands manage stress responses, and the pancreas regulates blood sugar. Imbalances in these hormones can lead to various health issues. Hormones influence not just physical processes but also behavior and mood. For example, adrenaline prepares the body for action, while sex hormones affect motivation and reproduction. The interplay between hormones and the nervous system shapes everything from stress responses to emotional well-being. Medical advances have raised complex ethical questions about brain death and life support. When the brain's higher functions are lost but the brainstem remains active, patients may appear alive but have no awareness. Deciding when to withdraw life support involves medical, ethical, and personal considerations, highlighting the profound connection between biology and human values. Summary: biopsychology reveals the deep connections between our biology and our behavior. From genes to neurons to hormones, every part of our body plays a role in shaping who we are. By understanding these systems, we gain insight into health, personality, and the human experience. The journey through biopsychology is just beginning. There's always more to discover about the amazing machine that is the human body and mind.